Hello, everyone, and welcome back to my lair. I am the Night Walker, and I'm here with another movie review. Um, I just had to come up with or I just had to come to terms with a very disturbing truth. In the entire, over the past year now that I've been doing YouTube videos, I've been doing them on this channel, and I've been doing them on my other channel, Cinema 77 Horror Cult Film Lover, as well as doing weekly reviews for the Body Bags channel. As a horror fan, I love Clive Barker. I love his books. I love his artwork. I love, a lot of the movies and things based off of his work. I adore Candyman. Hellraiser is one of my favorite movies. I love that movie to death. Nightbreed, I think, is just so unique and so different and so wonderful in its own way. But the thing is I just realized, like, I think I've been doing this entire time, but I don't think I've ever reviewed one of his movies, and I'd like to go ahead and change that now. Like I said, it would be real easy to just grab Candyman and say, hey, we're going to talk about Candyman, or hey, here's Hellraiser. I'm going to talk about Hellraiser and stuff like that. It's so easy to do that, but I think I'm going to go ahead and try for a Clive Barker film that I don't really hear too many people talk about, and I thought it was actually an interesting little film. Of course, the thing is, if you ever read Clive Barker's books or short stories or plays, or you see any of his films or whatever, you always realize that whatever he writes is going to be interesting. And that's why, for some of his fans, I think they honestly feel like he doesn't have the output of work that they would like for him to have. And I think that always stems from the fact that, Clive Barker's like, if I'm going to write a book, or if I'm going to write a story or something like that, I need to make sure it's going to be worth people's time and energy to put into it. And so the movie we're talking about, well, you already know because you've seen the title of the video. The movie we're going to talk about here is Dread, and this came out in 2009. The movie stars Jackson Rathbone, who played, I forget the character's name on Twilight. I got to be honest, I'm not really big on Twilight anyway, so yeah, I'm sorry, I don't really know the characters' names. But you have him, and Sean Evans plays a character named Quaid. You have, and the story is actually, it's very interesting, and it's quite different from a lot of Clive Barker's other stories. If you read, a lot of his books, or his short stories, you realize there's always usually a very strong supernatural element to a lot of his work. A lot, like a very strong, even though supposedly, Barker has said that he's not religious, that, but there is always like a very strong religious element to a lot of his work. And, but this one here is actually quite different. The story concerns a young film school student named Stephen, who is played by Jackson Rathbone. And he's, just hanging about, doing his thing, going, he's going to school, taking his classes and everything. And he has this one girl that he works with at the school library named Abby. And this girl, Abby, she has kind of like all going down the right side of her body. She has a large birthmark. And it's kind of similar to like the birthmark that you see on Ed Neal's face on as the hitchhiker in the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre. But this here, like I said, it's pretty much, it goes down, the length of the right side of her body. And I'm gonna, just so you know, I'm gonna be getting into some spoilers here and things. And it's clear that she does like Steven, but he's not particularly feeling the same way as her. So Steven meets this guy named Quaid, who's played by Sean Evans, and they start just talking about stuff, and they start talking about fear and the levels of fear that people can reach to, and what does fear do to people. And and so Quaid comes up with the idea, here's what I would like to do. I would like to do a study on fear, and to see, to talk to people, see how it has affected their lives, see what it does to them, so on and so forth, and everything else. And so, at first, Steven, he's a tiny bit reluctant, but, he decides, what the hell, let's go for it. And so he goes to this friend of his, Cheryl, who's a film editor, and she's, a strong, independent girl and everything. But he goes to her, tells her he needs her to help him, uh, cut his documentary together, the film school project that they're doing. And she decides, okay, sure, I'll go ahead and I'll do it. And so they start printing out flyers, people coming in and talking about what they're afraid of, what they fear, what they dread. And like people come in, they talk about their the normal things. They're afraid of spiders, they're afraid of snakes, they're afraid of this or that or whatever else. And Quaid is, he's very like adamant. He really wants to get to the bottom of what people fear, and he wants to, but we find out that Quaid actually has kind of a different ulterior motive in line. And what it is that Quaid, we find out as a little boy, he was traumatized by seeing his mother and father being murdered by a man with an axe. And Quaid just barely made it out alive himself. Well, for all these years, he's been living pretty much on medication. He's been in therapy and things like that. And but he's trying to come to grips with what he fears and trying to deal with it. And ultimately, he decides, I'm not going to do this. I'm not taking this anymore. I'm not going to do the pills and all that other kind of stuff. So he gets rid of all of his medication and things. And but he starts to, he really starts to unravel. You see that he's, what it turns out really being is that he is always living in constant fear. He's always living in constant dread, and he wants people to experience that as much as he does, if not more. So what he's trying to do is he's trying to get people to bring out their innermost fears and their innermost scared secrets and things like that, and he wants to exploit it to the maximum to get these people to react, and he wants to live vicariously through them. And then at one point, we find out that Stephen, he had a fear of when he was with his brother. He was 15 years old. His brother got into a car accident. His brother died, and he talks about the thing that he fears is that he could have been in the car with his brother and died the same day he did. So, like I said, Quay tries to capitalize on that by buying the exact same make and model car that, Steven's brother died in, and tells him, here's the keys, go, when you're ready, start driving the car. And at one point, the girl Cheryl that's cutting the film with him, she talks about the thing that she fears was that when she was a young girl, that her father took a job working in a meat plant. We find out early on in the movie that Cheryl does not eat meat. She's strict vegan, vegetarian, will not eat meat or anything like that. And we find out the reason why is that her dad worked in a her dad worked in a meat plant, and like he would come home at night and he would, she could smell the meat on him. She could smell, and like he would be, she could hear his boots coming towards her bedroom door. And essentially she's saying that, she was sexually molested by him over and over and over again, that her mother, either she didn't know about it or she knew about it, she didn't care. Whatever the reason, she never stepped in, she never, did anything about it. And that's the thing that she fears. And so at one point he takes her and he locks her in a room with a stake, and then expects her, the only way she's going to get out of this situation is she's got to eat it. She got to eat the steak. And so he's doing these, kind of like trying to make her relive the the horrifying ordeal that she went through over and over again in her mind. As a matter of fact, that's meant to be Cheryl right there. And so she's locked in the room and everything, and finally she does end up eating the meat. And and at one point he tells Stephen, because Stephen, they're in this confrontation and things, and he tells her that no, she's gone, she left and everything else. So, and it turns out Quaid actually brings in one person, and this is actually pretty relevant. Quaid brings in this one person, and he talks about, and this guy talked about when he was a kid, he got hit by a car, and the injury left him, deaf for about 3 years before he finally recovered from it, and he finally got his hearing back. And so what ends up happening is that Quaid ends up bringing in this young man, and he tries to simulate that that he's lost his hearing again and stuff like that. And he's like, you can still hear me, can't you? He's like, this isn't going to work. So he takes a gun and fires it on both sides of the young man's head, and basically breaks his eardrums so he can't hear anything. And so this, and so now this guy is just in total panic, and he's pretty much lost it. And as the character of Abby, like I said, she has the birth scar that goes, or the birthmark that goes all the way down the right side of her body. At first, he seduces her and tells her that he's attracted to her and things like that, and she ends up asking him to paint her, but make her look normal, like just no marks, no nothing on her. So he does, but then what he ends up doing to exploit her to get her to fear is that he ends up showing her posing for the picture, and he takes what was supposed to be the normal side. He takes the paint and paints it, and then holds up a sign saying "You will never be normal." And this makes Abby just lose it, and so she ends up. You end up with one of the most gruesome scenes in the whole movie. There is that Abby decides, basically she's getting like something like a scour pad or something. She gets into a bathtub with bleach, and she starts just scrubbing and taking skin off and everything else. And that's really one of the most gruesome scenes in the whole film, is that. And she's out, she's walking and she's pouring bleach into the wounds and stuff like that, trying to clean herself. And Steven sees her walking in the hallway, and she just barely survives. She goes into the hospital, of course. Now she's really disfigured. The one thing I don't understand though is like, and here's the thing: it's like the character of Abby. She's got that. That's kind of like the one thing I think would be a little bit unrealistic in this movie, because Abby, even with the birthmark running down her body, the woman is incredibly stunning. She's very, very beautiful, and unfortunately, they don't show her on the back here or anything like that. But the character of Abby, she's incredibly beautiful. She's incredibly stunning, just super gorgeous to look at. And I think I just feel like it's not completely realistic. I think there would be so many men out there, and probably lesbians too. They would still hit on this girl. They would still really, really, really try to hit her up for a date. And even if it's not that the character of Steven is unattracted to her. It's just that he is more. His heart is just more with Cheryl. He wants to be with Cheryl more, and he just, as far as he's concerned, he feels more of a bond or more of a connection with Cheryl than he does with Abby. But that being said, it's all like, you know, still, this girl would be constantly being hit on day in and day out. I'm sure of it. She would have, I mean, I'm sure she would probably feel like, guys are just saying this to be nice to me. Nobody would ever really want to go out with me. But no, that's not true. In a lot of cases, guys would still be, no, they would really, really want to hook up with her, and they would have no problems with the way she looks. And if anybody, said anything to her or mouthed off to her or something like that, they turn around and knock the shit out of them for it. So, anyway, got off base there, but, just kind of like, that's the one thing that kind of was like a little nit that I had to pick about this movie, was just, I didn't buy the whole thing about Abby being, consider ugly and all that kind of stuff. No, I mean, if you see look at the movie, the woman still looks amazingly beautiful. So, and I'm sure, you probably look at her, you'd be like, I'd still ask her out. I'd still go out with her, So anyway, though, going back to it, but yeah, as the movie progresses on and on, though, we find out though that that's really what Quaid's whole motivation is. He wants to get everybody to really be in fear, to really be scared. He wants to live, fear vicariously through them, and he keeps going on and on and on, and then when the character of Steven decides he's going to confront Quaid, that's the one thing too that kind of bugged me, is that Steven goes and uses an axe to chop down the door to scare Quaid, but then Quaid turns around and ties Steven to a chair, and he makes him watch all this footage he shot of Cheryl, where she's locked in this room, and the only way she's going to get out, she's got to eat this steak, and he's doing the whole simulation thing to freak her out and all this kind of stuff. And finally, after days, the meat's rotting, it's got maggots on it and everything. It's pretty gross to watch. I mean, if you want something that's going to make you gag, that will do it. But she finally does break down and eat the meat. And then he tells Steven, I let her out. And then the young man, who was deaf for all those years and Quaid blew out his eardrums. See, this actually, watch the interview with Clive Barker, and Clive Barker said that he actually wrote that in the story and drew from an experience that he had as a young boy, that he actually went deaf for a period of time, and finally his hearing did, come back to him. But he said, talked about how scary it was and how it was frightening, and it separates you from the rest of the world. And so he incorporated that into the story. And so the guy, he gets into the house, and he takes the axe that Stephen had, and he's going to attack both him and Quaid, and he gets Stephen in the chest with the axe, and Stephen falls down, and the guy's laughing. Quaid comes up behind him, shoots the guy through the shoots the guy's head, and he falls down, dies. And then the biggest thing is like Quaid gets to really what he wants. He gets to vicariously live through Stephen as Stephen lays on the floor dying. And once that's done, you start to wonder, okay, well, where is this going to go? Did he really let Cheryl out, and all that kind of stuff? Then he starts dragging the body, dragging it down the stairs. They're in this old house, old rundown house, and puts her. Turns out she's locked up in this small room in the basement, and he ends up bringing Steven's body in there. He's all like, "Okay, you ate that steak." And he takes a knife, throws it, hits into the floor, and he's like, "Let's see how hungry you got to be to get through this." And so this is what I'm saying. The thing about Quaid is, it's like, it never ends for him. If anything else, he's just looking for the next level, the next level, the next level, and and it's just going to go on. So yeah, so this movie is it's very interesting. Uh, as all of Clive Barker's stories are, there's always something else going on. There's always, it's not just, that's the thing, he doesn't just do like simple monsters or so. There's always something. He always tries to reach for something that we can connect with, and something that whether it's desire or sexuality or religious beliefs or anything like that. That's what Clive Barker does. There's always a little something else going on in the stories that he writes. And in this case, like I said, this is much more of a human horror story. The horror really comes from how terrible people can be to each other, and the horrible situations that people put each other in and put themselves in. Um, the horror of somebody who is so determined to reach a certain goal that they keep going, they keep going, they keep going, no matter who ends up getting hurt in the process, no matter how many lives are destroyed, no matter what, who has to go down. This person is going to do what they got to do to achieve what they want to achieve. So that's where the real horror in the story comes from. But honestly, yeah, if you're a Clive Barker fan, I think you're really going to love this movie. And if you're worried, that, well, what if it doesn't follow Barker's short story? Well, rest assured, there's some bonus features on here. There's an interview with Barker on here where he talks about that. He adores this movie. He backs it up 100%. He really appreciates the writer director, and thought that they did, it turned out perfectly, so he's happy with it. So so in case if you're a Clive Barker fan, you're worried whether this movie doesn't live up to it, rest assured, that it's got Barker's seal of approval on it. So, and this here, unfortunately, it didn't seem like it went too much farther. But originally, yeah, Lionsgate put this movie out. There was Midnight Meat Train. There was Book of Blood, and what was originally going to happen was that there was going to be, they were going to pretty much take all the stories from Clive Barker's Books of Blood series, and they were going to turn them all into movies. And for whatever reason, that didn't happen, which that's really unfortunate because some of these movies are really good. But yeah, so I figured I'd go ahead and just talk about this one because this one is one of the more lesser known Clive Barker films. I felt like this is something that you know was a little bit more easier to talk about. Like I said, it would have been so easy to talk about Candyman or Lord of Illusions or any of those kind of stuff. But this one here I think is a little bit different. And I do recommend it. If you come across this, if you're a Clive Barker fan and you're a fan of the After Dark Horror Fest, I definitely say pick it up and check it out. It's a thought provoking film. It's pretty bleak. You want gore, you're gonna get gore. You want some vicious scenes in here, you're gonna get it. So I would definitely say, yeah, if you're up for that kind of thing and you love Clive Barker films, go ahead and check out Dread. Give it a shot. I think you'd like it. So yeah, that's pretty much it. hitting on 20 minutes already. So if anybody took the time to watch this video, I thank you for doing it. And I appreciate you for doing it. I honestly hope you enjoyed this video. And if you did, please like and subscribe. There'll be weekly videos posted. And until the next time, this is the Night Walker. And you better be careful because you never know. You might see me out and about at night.